Hello, everyone. I'm Robin Percy, CTO of OpsGuru, and I'm here to talk today about the challenges and opportunities that we see clients facing as they go digital first on hybrid and multi-cloud environments. To start with, I'll give just a quick background of OpsGuru. We are a Canadian cloud consultancy based out of Vancouver, but have offices around the globe. And we were acquired earlier this year by Carbon60. Together, we're able to offer fully integrated professional services, consulting services, and managed services across public, private, and multi-cloud environments. Our teams specialize in application modernization, digital transformation, and data analytics. And we've seen incredible growth in all of these areas recently. So with that experience, obviously we see a number of challenges and are constantly helping our clients overcome these. And today we're going to talk about what some of those common challenges are and how we help customers mitigate them. First, looking at why we see customers adopting or moving into these digital transformation initiatives, there's really three key drivers that we look at. First of all is the need to take advantage and capitalize on increased connectivity with users via their mobile devices and IoT and newer technologies. On the data side, the amount of data made available through these and other streams requires changes in how customers or how our customers store and use that data to make sure it's available for analytics and decision making. And on that front, with decision making, obviously the amount of innovation in that space means customers are constantly looking for ways to use modern analytics and BI practices to gain competitive advantage. The common denominator in all these, of course, is cloud, both public and private, for several advantages that it offers. Primarily, there's reduced total cost of ownership with things like elastic infrastructure and on-demand provisioning of services, as well as minimizing total cost of ownership with things like managed services and allowing operational teams to quickly spin up new services for their development and engineering teams to rapidly experiment and iterate on. With those opportunities, of course, comes challenges. And the three main challenges we see are the growing IT skills gap across the industry, the complexity inherent in a lot of these systems, and then the transformation costs that come out of these initiatives, both as part of the transformation as well as total cost of ownership considerations. So we'll spend a few slides diving into what these challenges look like, as well as how we help mitigate them. Looking at the IT skills gap, this is actually just one small corner of it, particularly the cloud native ecosystem. And when we see this, it's easy to understand how hard it is for engineers and operators to stay on top of this level of innovation and proliferation of services. It's further compounded in multi-cloud and hybrid cloud environments, as each platform has its own service offerings, its own technical stack and idiosyncrasies. Compounding these issues are the facts that as you're initiating these digital transformation programs, the need for human resources and engineers spikes because you're dealing with additional work as well as day-to-day operations and maintenance and development. The skills required during these periods is also unique in that compared to steady state maintenance and development, you're constantly reintegrating and discovering new requirements, new characteristics of the workloads being migrated, and having to synthesize that back into implementation efforts. So even with the existing teams, the level of efficiency tends to drop with those sorts of efforts. The way we help with this, first of all of our engagement methods focus on enablement. So when we come in and help organizations through transformations, we are collaborating with their teams to ensure that in the later stages, those teams are able to be proficient in the technologies being used. As part of that, we focus on establishing a cloud center of excellence, which is composed of team members within our clients to carry that knowledge forward and disseminate it throughout their teams. As well, our specialists are not just experts in the cloud technologies, they're also experts in working in these transitionary environments where they're constantly resynthesizing and reintegrating requirements as they are discovered. And then finally, our managed service offerings allow a truly universal platform or truly universal experience for operators and engineers across hybrid and multi-cloud. Now, looking at complexity and where that comes from, it's really coming from multiple directions over the course of these transformation initiatives. Near the start, typically we're looking at complexity from the existing environment, things like technical debt, data gravity concerns, like understanding which workloads are particularly sensitive to latency when they're accessing data and should be moved in orchestration with those data systems. And then as we move on, more human factors start coming into the picture, like establishing communication channels between different parts of the organization that may not be used to collaborating frequently, as well as considering longer term licensing and cost optimization concerns or factors on how these workloads and licenses are migrated. The way that we help with complexity is by applying a proven methodology that balances analysis with iterative implementation. We find this approach effective in generating a framework as we go, that as each workload is migrated and prototyped and pilot workloads are chosen to migrate, a general framework is established that allows us to start migrating applications in bulk. And when this is paired with our managed services offerings, those applications are immediately available for modernization and further optimization efforts on that uniform platform. And with the concept of optimization brings us to the topic of cost management. As far as where transformation costs come from, there are four key areas we see. One being false starts and rework as a result of teams not being comfortable with the environments that they're migrating to and the technologies being used. There's also duplicate and supplemental infrastructure required over transitionary periods, meaning the shorter you can make those periods and the more discrete you can make them around specific workloads, the lower that aspect of the costs will be. And then there's the reduced operational and engineering capacity as team members are pulled into planning and design efforts that take away from their day-to-day roles. Finally, and most impactful often, is missed opportunities for funding and incentives from cloud vendors themselves. And we'll talk specifically about that one in a moment. But for all four of these considerations, we really have two tools that we go to quite regularly to mitigate these costs. The first of these tools is our Cloud Launchpad product, which addresses three cost factors. First of all, it uses infrastructure as code as both a delivery and a training tool to accelerate our clients' learning curve and rapidly show value as it establishes a best practices foundation of cloud infrastructure. This prevents rework as best practices design and guardrails are enforced by the code base itself. And we find this is the most direct way for customers to benefit from our experience by saving time on common architecture decisions that can be quite impactful down the line. Our Cloud Launchpad product does support all major clouds, including private cloud technologies, and when coupled with managed services, provides a truly uniform developer and operator experience across hybrid and multi-cloud environments. Our second tool for addressing transformation costs is really just understanding how to navigate these funding programs. The diagram here shows one typical process that we would use to navigate funding in a vendor. However, it's worth noting that these programs change frequently and are certainly different between vendors themselves. So really internalizing that is something that we take very seriously as an organization. Uh, Customers that come to us that haven't come through a vendor channel typically are surprised at how much funding really is available or how many incentives are available. Even for relatively small migration efforts, it's not uncommon to achieve 25, 50, and even sometimes 100% funding of specific efforts in those migrations. That the funding amount tends to depend on things like types of workloads and licenses being migrated, the services being targeted as platforms for the migration, and other factors. So as you go through the migration process, it's critical to keep these funding factors in mind, especially if you're working with a partner of one of the cloud vendors, where many of our efforts can be completely funded by the cloud vendor itself. So just recapping on those three areas, we've covered the challenges of growing IT skills gaps and how OpsGuru helps its customers by augmenting their teams with specialists that also accelerate their team's time to proficiency on their new platforms. We address complexity of their systems and the migration efforts by applying our methodology that balances analysis with iteration, validation, and provides that predictable end-to-end framework for migrations. And finally, addressing transformation costs by really taking steps to minimize the time in transition for each subsystem, as well as making effective use of vendor incentives. So with that, I'd like to thank you for listening. We do have a fireside chat at our vendor booth at 2:30 today, and would encourage everyone to stop by and have a chat, and we'll discuss some specific case studies around many of these challenges and mitigations that we've discussed. And with that, I would now like to welcome Meredith Whalen to the stage. Meredith is IDC's Chief Research Officer, and will be discussing accelerating your path to a digital-first enterprise. Welcome, Meredith.